Hi, Barbie! Welcome to the GRETA-THON on Coffee Nick's Movie Picks, a limited film review series celebrating and honoring the portfolio of Greta Gerwig over a lovely cup of coffee. My name is Nick Delaney, and this Ken is your show host, coffee extraordinaire, film researcher, and the guy who actually saw Oppenheimer before he saw Barbie, strangely enough. In our final official review of the GRETA-THON, Part 8, we are discussing the cultural reset that is Barbie, the 2023 film starring Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling, written and directed by Greta Gerwig. If talking Barbies brings back some intense childhood memories, you're in luck. Today's coffee review is featuring beverages from Childhood Cafe in Northwest DC. Now, please take a seat, stay a while, and let's talk I'm gonna beat you off over some coffee. Huh? But first, please be sure to follow at Coffee Nick's Movie Picks on Instagram and TikTok. There you can stay up to date on new releases, see coffee pictures that go along with each and every episode, get some quick movie thoughts from yours truly, and submit Dear Coffee Nick letters. Again, that's at Coffee Nick's Movie Picks on Instagram and TikTok. For those of you who are just joining us, we are at the tail end of the GRETA-THON right now, and that is a special series that the show has been running for the month of August and early September. If you want to know more about what that series is, please see the introductory episode, and please enjoy discussions on Gerwig films like Lady Bird and Little Women, which are all out now. Without any further ado, welcome to the Barbie episode. I know that so many of you have been waiting such a long time for this one. It's finally here. I know this is the most anticipated one. It's here. This is the Barbie episode. This is the end of the GRETA-THON. I am so nervous and so intimidated to talk about Barbie. I really am. And I know I said that about Lady Bird as well, but this is like a different type of intimidation, I think. Lady Bird, I was intimidated because it's my favorite film of all time and like it meant so much to me personally. Barbie, I'm really intimidated because it is such like it had such a global impact. This movie means so much to so many other people, and now I have to talk about it. And it's just such a phenomenon. For Lady Bird, I was worried about paying respects to my own feelings. And for this one, I'm worried about paying respects to like literally everyone in this world's feeling. And it's funny because I know I'm not comparing myself to, Gerwig making this film, but it's just funny because I've heard interviews of Gerwig talking about making Barbie when it was just an early idea and concept. And she also was really nervous about making Barbie because she had to pay homage to everyone's relationship with Barbie, and she had to make that, everyone's relationship with this doll into one cohesive story, which she has stated was very intimidating to her. This is just a very intimidating movie to talk about, or I mean, even to research, it was intimidating. And, let alone Gerwig, who made this movie. She had the weight of the world on her shoulders. Here we are talking about it. Where do I even begin with it? Who knows? We'll see when we get to the review. But hello. Hi, everyone. I'm just checking in. This is the final official review of the GRETA-THON. We have our finale, kind of like conclusion episode that will be coming out in a few days from now. And I'm just going to talk about like what I thought about the series. I'm going to share a special announcement. It'll be fun. It'll be a nice little palate cleanser after the GRETA-THON. And I'll be ready to talk about other movies after this. So I'm so excited about that. But yes, in terms of what's going on with me, I think I am finally settled into my new house, which was a process. It felt a little chaotic for no reason in particular. I just don't know if I was emotionally ready to move in or to move out, I guess. And if you listen to the Lady Bird episode, that's explicitly clear. It's very apparent that I maybe was not emotionally ready to move out, but that's okay. That's okay. I spoke my truth. I don't regret it. But I think I'm finally settled in. I'm getting used to being in a new environment and being in a city. So that's great. That's great. The voices have stopped, so that's good. But yeah, I've been very appreciative to have some extra time to just sort of be myself and to relax and do things that I've been wanting to do. So with that in mind, I've been watching a lot of movies. I've been watching some shows, which if I'm watching shows, that means I'm like on top of things and I have time to do stuff. And with this, whenever I'm like watching something, I feel like I also have the time to write and to create things, whether that be like this podcast, but also just like my personal writing. And I've gotten to do that a lot more too, which has been really nice catching up with sort of like my writer side and everything. Now, what I have not had the time to catch up on is Little Women. I have not read any more Little Women since the Little Women episode. I This is my accountability system here. I'm going to talk about this on the podcast from now on, like my progress with Little Women, because I need to hold myself accountable because I really, really need to read this book. It's crazy that I have not read Little Women yet. Yet I'm so, engaged with Little Women in my research and personal interests and everything. So hold me accountable. Ask me how I'm doing on Little Women, please. Okay, enough of this. My last note is there's a chill in the air, and it makes me so happy. Fall is coming. It's coffee season. This is the best time for coffee. I think that like peak coffee season starts when there's a chill in the air and lasts through the holiday season. It is my favorite time to drink coffee, and it's my favorite time to get little cute coffee drinks with like little fall flavors. It just makes me happy, and that's all. Now, moving along, we have shit to do today. We really do. We have a checklist. Barbie, oh my, there's so much to talk about. So moving right along. Now Brewing is a luxury coffee discussion and review segment. And Now Brewing on this episode is a review of Childhood Cafe in Northwest Washington, D.C. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this cafe itself before starting because there are so many interesting things about this cafe. The first interesting thing is that it's new. This was opened in April, and that leads me into the second interesting thing. It was opened by and is actually owned by NBA star Kyle Kuzma. Childhood Cafe is an extension of his fashion label, which is called Childhood Dreams. I don't follow the NBA at all. I am not really a sports fan. I'm not an athlete myself. Don't go to the gym. I really don't know anything about being athletic, unfortunately. So I have never heard of Childhood Dreams before Childhood Cafe was opened. I unfortunately did not know who Kyle Kuzma was before Childhood Cafe was opened, but what a great way to be introduced to him, right? Is through coffee. Coffee is connection, after all. Am I right or am I right? Now, a lot of the drinks and pastry items here are inspired by flavors that would remind someone of their childhood, which I think that's just a lovely little inspiration. Obviously, it's connected to his Childhood Dreams brand, but I think it just also makes for like a wonderful theme for a coffee shop. So their signature drink is a strawberry Pop-Tart latte, and they also have a homemade strawberry Pop-Tart as a pastry too. So I just love this concept. I think that this is so cool, um, and they kind of run with it. So yeah, I'm very excited to see where this coffee shop goes and what other drinks they come out with and what pastry items they have. So I'm definitely like going to be staying in touch or going to this coffee shop regularly. Moving on to the store itself. I think it's very cute. They have some art on the wall. I really like their sign that they have out front, and they have like lots of plants in the window and everything. It's very picturesque. It's very nice inside. Having heard about the store right around when it opened, I was kind of like in my head expecting like this huge, massive coffee shop. But this is really just a very small coffee shop nestled into like a somewhat residential area of DC. It's a very pretty location and it makes the coffee house feel a bit more intimate, which I really appreciate. And I definitely prefer that intimate feeling over like some huge, grandiose coffee shop. The inside of the store is very clean and decorated really nicely. The majority of the seating, though, is outside. So if the weather's bad or if it's the winter time, I wouldn't really recommend going to this place to like catch up with a friend or anything. Just keep in mind that if you're going to be going here, most of the seating is outside, but there is some seating inside as well, which the seating inside is lovely too. And my last note about, I guess, the store environment, the staff was so lovely and so sweet, and they all had little stylish outfits on. And I appreciate that, of course. I am a huge proponent of the barista experience. So I love to see baristas that are looking stylish and who are very kind and welcome you with a smile and are very friendly, and they like to get to know the people that walk through the doors. You definitely get that at Childhood Cafe. So immediately that's like a thumbs up for me. Now, moving on to the main event here, the drinks. I, of course, had to try the strawberry Pop Tart latte because that is their signature. And I feel like if you know the show, you know that I don't really prefer coffee that's overly sweet. So I was a little nervous about this one, but bear with me. First, I'll talk a little bit about this drink and what's in it. So, the strawberry Pop Tart latte is an iced latte, or at least I got it iced, with house made strawberry jam and a double shot of espresso. Then it's topped with whipped cream, strawberry frosting, and rainbow sprinkles. Okay, that's lovely. That sounds delicious. Strawberry and coffee is one of those combinations that you usually don't hear of, but it's one of those combinations that I want. I want more of. It's sort of like blackberry coffee or blueberry coffee. You or orange blossom coffee. That's another thing too. You don't often hear of flavors like that combining with coffee, but I feel like the places that do that, they do it so right. You know, I don't know if I'm making sense here, but long story short, they did it right. This is such a visually appealing drink, and they really brought the idea of a Pop Tart latte to life. I think that this could have gone very wrong, but it did not. It's good. It's good. And my verdict about the sweetness is it's really not as sweet as I thought it would be, which is really great. I was worried this would kind of be like Frappuccino vibes, like just way too much of everything. But I think they really took care in putting the right amount of like strawberry and whipped cream and all that. So I appreciate that. I don't think the coffee gets too lost in the drink. I think it's good that they put a double shot of espresso in here because you still get that like bold espresso taste that you would get in any other latte, but you also have these like really sweet and fun flavors in there as well. The strawberry Pop Tart latte is creative, it's colorful, it's delicious, and it lives up to the childhood name of the cafe very well. So I think it's completely worthy of being the cafe's signature drink. And if you're going here and you're looking for something to get, this is the go to. This is the signature. So definitely try this one out. I very much enjoyed this one. I love sprinkles, and I think putting sprinkles on coffee is, this is the time to do it. A Pop Tart latte. That's the time we're going to put sprinkles on coffee, So, yeah, I just loved that little fun element to it. I still don't think this was exactly for me. It is a sweet drink, regardless, but I appreciate that it's not overly sweet or anything. But yeah, it's great. This was really good. So I'm giving the strawberry Pop Tart latte a Nick pick. Now, I got another drink here because I wanted to sort of get a feel for everything at this coffee place. And the other drink I got was something that I pretty much knew that I was going to really like, but I wanted to see how they approached it. And that drink is the brown sugar shaken espresso. Now, I used to work for a corporate coffee chain that I won't be naming right now, but that corporate coffee chain does have their own version of the brown sugar shaken espresso. And it is my go-to drink there. When I would get my free drinks, that is what I got every single time. Not every single time, but pretty frequently. It is my favorite drink, and these are some of my favorite flavors to have in coffee is brown sugar and cinnamon. And I just love the idea of a shaken espresso. I love the foam that produces on top when you shake it. I think it gives it such a refreshing and smooth taste and feeling. So yeah, I love this drink to begin with. So a lot of pressure was on Childhood Cafe's version of the drink. And their version is made with house made brown sugar syrup and it's shaken to perfection. And I, of course, got it with oat milk. And they were really shaking this thing good. I watched from behind the counter and yeah, they did it right. I appreciated that. It had a nice layer of espresso foam on it. So, green flags all around. And I have to say, the drink itself was so good. It was so good. And maybe it's the fact that this brown sugar syrup is house made, but the flavor here is just delicious. And dare I say, this is better than the aforementioned corporate coffee place that I was talking about. This, yeah, yeah, Nick pick right away. It, they did it so right. I am so happy for them, and I cannot wait to go back and get this drink. Um, yeah, thank you, Childhood Coffee. They really know what they're doing. They know how to handle coffee. I'll be honest, I had my concerns like going here. I was like, strawberry Pop Tart latte, it sounds like overkill a bit. I don't know if that would translate well into a coffee drink, but it did. And they know what they're doing and they have a great atmosphere in the cafe. The pastries look delicious. I did not try any of the pastries, but if you go, I strongly encourage you to get one and let me know how it is. The strawberry Pop Tart that they had, that's homemade. It's not like a, strawberry Pop Tart from a wrapper or anything. It's a homemade Pop Tart. It looked so good. And I would love to try that the next time that I go. So overall, I am going to give Childhood Cafe a Nick pick. With a cozy, intimate atmosphere and drinks that are focused on creativity and craft, Childhood Cafe is a lovely addition to the DC coffee scene. I appreciate their dedication to affordability while still delivering a unique and from scratch experience. Let's talk about that. I love that this brown sugar syrup and the strawberry jam were both house made. That is an attention to detail and a love for the craft that you don't see at every cafe. So, you know, snaps to them for doing that. It does not go unseen. I appreciate this attention to detail. So, highly recommend making the trip to Childhood Cafe if you're ever in Northwest DC. All right, moving right along to our next segment, the coffee thought, an outlet dedicated to voice my many incoherent thoughts over a lovely cup of coffee. Now, I never have coffee with me, but right now I do have my ice water in my Owala water bottle. So that's lovely. And what I want to talk about is maybe a variety of things. We'll see. But the first thing I want to talk about is that today there was, they released the trailer to the live action Minecraft movie. What the fuck was that? I'm being so for real right now. What the fuck was that? I think I first played Minecraft, what was it? 2012? Maybe even sooner. I think it was released in 2011 or 2010, but it had to be maybe like around 2012. Like I was in 5th or 6th grade. So I've been a longtime fan, like many, many, many people. And there are so many different generations that have an attachment to Minecraft. So, like Barbie, this movie has a lot of pressure to do a lot of people and their relationship with Minecraft right. So, I get it. I get it. They're going to piss some people off. But watching this trailer, the reveal of like what the vibe is, what the fuck? Like it's not like I think I'm the only one that's disappointed by this because I had super weird and niche expectations. I looked at Twitter. A lot of other people feel this way. If you have not seen the trailer, just go watch it. It's like a minute and a half. What maybe like they're trying to go for that, like kind of like a very ridiculous camp sort of look, but it just looks so bad. And, everything is block style except for the live action actors. Um, so, it even the graphics in the trailer looked really bad because it's live action people in a completely like cartoonish landscape. So it looks very green screen in a bad way. And, but the animals are also kind of block form. And so they just kind of look deformed and weird. What was going on? And it just was bad vibes. And I'm glad Jack Black is having fun in it. Jason Momoa, what the fuck are you doing? What the fuck are you doing, Jason? Like, get out of there. Get out. He very much like Michael Keaton. I bet he's just in it for a fun, fat, nice check, which, would make sense looking at his recent films. I'm not over. I don't even know what else to say about it other than like it just looks bad. I think that there were so many other potential ways to go about this, I think. First of all, why do we feel the pressure to include live action actors? This is obviously like a world and a story that lends itself to being entirely animated. So why aren't we doing that? Same thing with like live, quote unquote, live action The Lion King. There is nothing live action about this. We are looking at CGI animals. I always wanted a brother. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Awful trailer. The songs do not sound good in this new live action, quote unquote, Lion King. I just don't get the fascination with live action that we're having right now. It's not like animation is a fad, but I think that these live action remakes definitely are. I think that it's robbing like a lot of creative animated movies that we could be experiencing. I mean, look at the Spider-Verse movies. Those are so creative and those are completely animated. I just think we are limiting ourselves here. And this has been a discussion, a conversation that has been had for quite a while now. I mean, ever since Disney started doing their little live action remakes and everything, people have been talking about this. We are limiting ourselves. It's a good excuse to like reinvent a story. For example, like I like some of the live action remakes, like Cinderella, The Little Mermaid. Those are actually like live action remakes that I think I enjoy better than the originals because they add to the story. There's like more depth and everything. But at the same time, every good live action remake that I think adds depth, there's 10 of them that are just shit. So it's not worth it to me. And I think like if we want to add more depth to these films, let's just remake them in their original medium, animation. I think it would also be really cool to see like Cinderella in modern animation. What would that look like? I want to see modern 2D animation from Disney. I know we really veered off the course from like the Minecraft movie, but like I said, I had a few things that I wanted to talk about. The Minecraft movie just looks bad, and it looks like they just took the completely wrong approach, in my opinion. But we'll see. Maybe it's going to be great, and maybe that's what they're going for. Maybe they're going for like a really weird, kind of gimmicky look to it. I don't get it. This Disney conversation, I just think the obsession with live action that I guess Hollywood has right now is weird. And I think a lot of people are starting to become not interested in it, which is good. But for as long as there's a name attached to whatever project, people are going to go see it. Like people will see the Minecraft movie. I will. So, if we keep seeing it, they'll keep making it, and it is what it is. But it's just weird. And the Minecraft movie is like the strangest example where I was like, why was this even a consideration to have this be quote unquote live action? So we will see. The one movie though that I love that is like live action and also animated is Enchanted, starring Amy Adams. And this is a good segue into my next little thought that I had that I wanted to talk about. Enchanted is such a great movie. It is so good. It's so inventive. It's so clever. I never watched the sequel that came out like a few years ago. I need to. I heard it wasn't good though. But Enchanted is a great movie, and I wish Disney made movies like that still. But segue into the other point I had that I wanted to talk about. Another trailer that came out in the past 24 hours that absolutely gagged me in the worst ways was Night Bitch, which is starring Amy Adams. And if you don't know what this movie is, it is a horror comedy movie about Amy Adams, who is a mom that believes she is turning into a dog or that can turn into a dog. And originally, I thought this would be like a psychological horror, and I was hoping it would take itself very seriously. But the trailer came out, and the tone is very lighthearted, it seems. And it just was like not funny, and it was really cringy. And I was just like, I am okay with my expectations not being met for a trailer or a movie or whatever, because, yeah, they're not going to exactly meet my expectations. That's ridiculous to think about. But this was so far off from what I was expecting in the worst way. So if you haven't seen that trailer, go watch it. But you probably, I don't know. I think that was just a me thing where I was like, this is not at all what I wanted. But yeah, so today's coffee thought is just trailers that did not sit right with me. But I think that's all I'm going to talk about today because we just have so much to be talking about with Barbie and all. So I'm going to get right into it if that's okay with you. So in our next segment, now showing the GRETA-THON, our feature ideological analysis and critical film review segment, honoring and celebrating the portfolio of Greta Gerwig, hosted by yours truly. Okay, now showing for part 8 of the GRETA-THON is Barbie. Although it needs no introduction, Barbie is the 2023 film that follows the iconic blonde plastic doll, played by Margot Robbie, in Barbieland, a world where women hold all major positions of power and are admired by the Kens. When Barbie starts to feel not perfect, she learns she must travel to the real world with Ken, played by Ryan Gosling, and set things back to normal by helping the girl who's playing with her. The film is directed by Greta Gerwig and co-written by Gerwig and Noah Baumbach. Where do I even begin with this film? I do not know. I don't know where to begin with this. First of all, I would like to say that I frankly will not be talking about everything about this movie because it's just impossible. There is so much to talk about, and I do not want to get into the weeds of like analyzing every single decision that was made with this film. Because for the most part, I think they're all wonderful decisions. There were so many creative liberties taken with this movie. Gerwig was tasked with something that was nearly impossible. She had to adapt this toy, this iconic toy that literally everyone knows about, into the film medium, into a story. So there are so many just excellent choices that I think she made along the way in bringing this toy to the big screen that, yeah, I loved these choices. So I cannot get into the weeds of overanalyzing every single decision that was made with this movie and everything in this movie because this film also moves so quickly and there is so much happening in it that I cannot address all of it. So I'm sorry if there's something that I did not address that you were really hoping to hear about, but hopefully I hit all the highlights and hopefully I'm concise with this movie. Similar to my review of Little Women, I have to begin by stating that I am a man. So please take everything I have to say about the gender commentary of this movie with a grain of salt. This movie is a little different from Little Women, though, in that it has a lot to say about masculinity. So I'm excited to talk about that a bit. But when it comes to feminism, yes, take what I say with a grain of salt, and I encourage you to watch this movie for yourself and interpret it for yourself, even though I think that there's probably no one on this planet that has not seen this movie. I really do believe that this movie is for everyone, regardless of gender. There is something for everyone to connect with, to enjoy, and to learn from this movie. Now, I also like to give a little background about the film. I've watched a lot of interviews where Gerwig is talking about making Barbie. And like I mentioned earlier, there is so much pressure in respecting people's relationship with Barbie um, in this movie. So Gerwig was really tasked with the impossible of adapting this iconic toy to the big screen and paying homage to thousands and millions, if not billions, of people's relationship to this brand and to this toy. And this reminds me of something that I picked up with my communication degree. And this is a theory or just concept called the burden of representation. So, burden of representation is basically a theory that states that media forms that represent a certain community are burdened by the pressure of everyone in that community looking towards the film or whatever the media is to be representative of them on an individual level in most cases. So it, you know, assesses like a lot of different media forms that a lot of people have negative opinions of because they feel it does not represent them. So I think that Barbie is, really lines up with this theory because I think that so many people were looking to this movie to feel seen and to feel represented. And, considering that, I think that this movie did a really good job in striving to have everyone represented and, feel seen. And it's really hard to make one singular story relevant and relatable to so many different people. All of that being considered, I think that Gerwig does a great job in including everyone. Also, Gerwig has mentioned that while the film definitely operates as a feminist text, she views it more as a human text. And I think that's really interesting. She is very adamant that the film is for everyone, regardless of gender. And I'll talk a little bit more about why that is later, but it mainly has to do with how she ended the movie and the storylines for both Barbie and Ken's character. Much like her adaptation of Little Women, I was just blown away by Gerwig's ability to adapt something that means so much to so many different people. Little Women was already a story. She was challenged with adapting it to make it more effective on the big screen. But Barbie, it's just a line of toys. There's really no story attached to it. There's slogans and, there's like the animated movies and everything, but those are, very separate from this. This, she was just adapting like the iconic blonde Barbie that we all think of when we think of Barbie. She was tasked with adapting that singular thing into a story and to making it mean something, and to, translating the decades of history of Barbie, and addressing all these different issues that Barbie has brought up and everything about Barbie, adapting that into one movie. How do you make a story out of that? And how do you make that doll into an actual character that has, emotions and motivations and goals and dialogue? How do you do all of that? How do you make a movie out of that? So, like Little Women in some ways, it kind of feels like an impossible task. And I also think that this is where Margot Robbie really comes in as a creative force. I do not think this movie would have been possible without her performance as Barbie. I think she fits the description very well. She is beautiful. She looks like a Barbie doll. So, of course, she's perfect in that sense. But she also is such a brilliant actor. And she brings the depth and the emotion and the complications of Barbie to the big screen with her facial expressions and just with her, like, the way she represents different emotions for Barbie. She does it so well. And of course, it couldn't have been possible for her because she is actually a producer of this movie. So she definitely had a say in how this movie was handled. I know that her and Gerwig attended a lot of meetings together at Warner Brothers or Mattel or wherever about this movie. And I think, if I'm recalling correctly, one of the meetings they went to, they were like, hey, I think it was at Warner Brothers, either that or Mattel. They were like, hey, you just have to trust us. You just have to give us control here. You have to trust us that this will be okay and it'll turn out right. Because they really do, like, they go pretty extreme in this movie in some respects. And they even, Mattel is basically its own character in this movie. So they critique Mattel a lot. They, kind of throw jabs at it. So, you know, th- with Margot there, I don't know if it would have been possible without her. I know that I haven't even talked about the movie itself yet, but in the end, I do not think that this movie could have been done any better. This is kind of the best option that we could have got. I will address my critiques later. I do not think this movie is perfect, but especially considering how the original Barbie movie would have had Amy Schumer playing Barbie, I think this is the best possible outcome. And I'm so happy with this movie. I love it and it's so much fun. And, everybody knows how great this movie is. This is not, a controversial opinion of mine. It's just a widely loved movie. So I think this is the best option we could have gotten, though. Before I get into my research with the movie, I want to switch it up and talk about the film itself first and my thoughts on the film before I get into the research, just because I think that'll make the research make more sense. So, the first thing I want to talk about here is that everything about this film does an excellent job in transporting you into this world of Barbie Land. The opening scene is brilliant. It's inspired by 2001 Space Odyssey, and it's basically showing how Barbie revolutionized play for girls, how she was like so different than what they had before. All they had before were baby dolls, and now there's this like beautiful lady in a bathing suit that they get to play with. So it just completely changed everything. So the opening scene right away does an excellent job. The score, obviously, this is one of the most iconic and impressive soundtracks of all time. And I think the film is so brilliant in starting with the song Pink by Lizzo. I think it's just a perfect start to the movie and it lines everything up so well. And I love yeah. But also on the score, we have Nicki Minaj, Ice Spice, Charlie XCX. Who else? Dua Lipa, of course, with Dance the Night. I can't believe I was forgetting that one. Sam Smith, Tame Impala, Tame Impala, that's crazy. Ryan Gosling even is credited on this score. Dominic Fike, and then Billie Eilish, of course. The Oscar-winning song "What Was I Made For?" The only Oscar that this film won, I think. Yeah, I think it's the only Oscar it won. Just an incredible score. I, of course, bought it on vinyl because how could you not? Other things that just are excellent and transport you into this world is the introduction to the Barbies and the Kens as characters instantly tells you what's up here and the dynamics of this movie and what's going on. On a more technical level, the costuming, the makeup, the set, the props, literally everything in this film is intended to transport you into this world, and it works so well. In my opinion, those elements are the most impressive parts of this movie. There is so much care for the source material, and there is such an attention to detail here that is just extraordinary. All of these things, especially like the set and the props and everything, it makes they're just toys. It makes you think of the Barbie toys. I love that the Barbies live in dream houses that, they don't have a backside to it because the dream houses don't, because that's where you play with the dolls is through the back. And the milk has that little thing that shoots out of it, the glasses aren't filled up with any liquid, and there's no water that comes out of the shower, and her hairbrush is huge and her toothbrush is huge. Everything is with such care for the source material. And this is why Gerwig is just so brilliant and so great when it comes to adaptation. And she pays such close attention to paying homage to where she's drawing these items and inspiration from. She did this with Little Women Great, and we'll see if she does this, to the same extent with Narnia. I'm excited to see that. So the next thing I want to talk about with this movie is the emotional moments. At this point, we know Gerwig can do this, and we know she can do it so well. So why are we surprised by this? But the emotional moments here are so great. And much like the emotional moments in Lady Bird and Little Women, so many people can connect to them, and it could mean so many different things to those people. These are not emotional moments that mean one thing. They are so interpretative and so profound and nuanced. They're just crafted beautifully. The first point of the movie that I think has a really prominent emotional moment is at the bus stop. Barbie in this scene is watching people at the park, and she sees the old lady sitting next to her at the bus stop, and she sheds a single tear, which I think is beautiful. One thing that Gerwig does throughout all of her films is she has like these montages. And, usually for a montage, there's like it's set to the pace of music or it's showing like progress for a character or a time lapse. But Gerwig uses montages for a completely different reason, which I think is very unique to her as a director. She uses montages to communicate a very, nuanced and profound emotion, an emotion that doesn't necessarily have a specific name. She does this, in Lady Bird and in Frances Ha and Little Women. There's just like little music montages of like childhood or just, you know, something very heartfelt. And nothing is being said specifically, but it's meant to make you feel a certain way. And I think that's what makes Gerwig's emotional moments in her films so effective. In this moment, the moment at the bus stop, I also really like how there is an alternate instrumental version of What Was I Made For playing in the background very lightly. This tune is also played when Barbie meets Ruth for the first time at the Mattel headquarters in that random room. And I think that this makes the final emotional moment of the film all the more effective and grand because it's almost like all the emotional moments are leading up to this final one. I mean, they quite literally are, but the music sort of makes it very easy for you to fall into these emotional moments and for the last one to hit the hardest, the way that the music is sort of hinted at. And then it is revealed at the end to be Billie Eilish's What Was I Made For, I think is very smart. And it makes it so that like when Billie Eilish starts playing at this really emotional moment, you're not like, oh, Billie Eilish, hey Billie. It feels very natural. And of course, the ending is so emotional and it's just a really, really great ending. I think it's a perfect ending. I'm talking about the scene with Ruth in sort of that like white, little colorful world that they're in. But also like the very ending with the gynecologist joke was great too. But um, I think that if there's one thing more impossible than writing a story for the character of Barbie, it's finding an ending for that story. And I think Gerwig found the perfect ending. And she did so in a way that I think this ending is so representative of life itself. It's incredibly profound. It and I don't know, like the montage at the end with all the kids playing with Barbies and the kids with their mother, the daughters with their mothers. It's just it that everyone has a mother. This is something that everyone will get emotional over, and everyone will connect to and find meaning in. So it just was. It, this was the best ending. It was just objectively like great, I think. And of course, all of these elements, the feeling of being in Barbie Land and the emotional moments, these are all delivered with just fantastic performances. And much like Little Women, this is just a stacked cast. Of course, Margot Robbie as Barbie is amazing. Like I was just saying before, the communication of Barbie's emotions and just this character, I don't think there's anyone that could have done it better than Margot. And my personal favorite, and I know it's not right because this is Ken and the movie's about Barbie, but Ryan Gosling is just fantastic. And I loved his performance as Ken so much. I loved it so much. It just makes me so happy and it's so fun and energetic and crazy. There's so many great moments. I mean, I'm just Ken. Um, my job is beach. Sublime. It's just all great. Him screaming like in the car when he sneaks away to the real world with Barbie, and he's just so cute. I just love Ryan Gosling. He's such a cutie. So I'm definitely biased, but how could you not? How could you not love Ryan Gosling as Ken? And of course, America Ferrera is stunning as Gloria and gives us that moment at towards the end with the monologue that is just so great. That is just one of the defining moments of this movie. And another kind of trend seen throughout Gerwig's works is having these monologues that sort of are all encompassing of the movie's message. In Little Women, we had Amy's monologue where she says, "Well, I'm not a poet, I'm just a woman." I think that a lot of the movie's meaning is found or could be represented in that one monologue. And it's very similar for America Ferrera's monologue here. She was Oscar nominated for this role, of course. I think that she could have very well won, but I'll get to that later. And I don't usually love Will Ferrell, but I think that his character in this was just so funny and just really great. I don't think the Mattel thing was seen through to the ending enough. Like I don't think they carried through with his character that much, but I think that it was just fun and it was really great. Also, this movie is just hilarious. It is so funny, and you can really tell that this is Gerwig's sense of humor. Out of all the movies that we've looked at, this one is definitely the goofiest, and I'm glad that it really didn't hold back in this regard. I think that the humor is ridiculous, it's campy, and I genuinely laugh out loud when I watch this every single time. However, I do think that there are moments when the film didn't know if it should be funny or serious. And because of this, there are serious moments where I think the humor takes me out of the film. It just kind of made for an inconsistent tone a bit. There's moments where characters will be super dramatic all of a sudden, and it doesn't really mean anything. There's the moment where Barbie gives up and Gloria and Sasha are with her, and Barbie just lays face down on the ground. And it doesn't really fit for me. It's like they're trying to be funny in a moment that's a little serious. And there's also the moment at the end where Barbie is comforting Ken and trying to console him. And there's this really dramatic moment where Ken runs to the side of the dream house and it looks like he's going to jump off, but he doesn't. And then it just kind of goes back to Barbie comforting Ken again. So it takes me out of it a bit. It's like, are they trying to be funny? It just, I don't know. And of course, the other thing that I would like to state about this movie, and it's usually something I don't talk about when I'm reviewing movies because this sort of is, it happens in post production, it's off the screen, is the marketing. But I think it's just something I have to address here. The marketing for this movie was, of course, brilliant. I don't know how else to cut it. The posters were great, and the Barbenheimer was maybe not intentional. It definitely wasn't intentional. I can't imagine how it would be, but that got a lot of people in the theaters just having two massive movies opening the same weekend. It got a lot of people in the seats. It just became a moment, and it was sort of lightning in a bottle. I think the marketing team here was very, very smart, but yeah, to some extent, it was just chance, I think, this being released with Oppenheimer. I think that they maybe intended both movies for very different audiences, but it quickly became the same people watching Barbie were seeing Oppenheimer later that day or vice versa. So, yeah, this was just a cultural moment. There isn't much else to say about it. It's going to go down in the history books. And yeah, I definitely addressed it in my research just how big this was. Okay. With all of that said, I that was such a summarization of all the great things about this movie. There is so many great aspects here, but like I said, I cannot touch on everything, or this would just be a ridiculously long review. With all of that said, I do have some critiques of this movie. I actually, the first time I saw it, it was a bit of a mixed bag for me. And it took a lot of thinking about the movie, and I had to watch it a second time in theaters that I really ended up loving it. But those critiques still stand with me. They didn't go away. So, like I mentioned earlier, the tone is a bit inconsistent here. In a lot of the emotional moments, there happen to be very high energy moments, or it's like in the very serious moments, they kind of throw in a little bit of humor, or not a little bit. They kind of throw it in very abruptly, and it takes me out of the emotional moments sometimes. I think the really emotional moments, the bus stop, and when Barbie meets Ruth for the first time, and when they meet for the last time, those moments are not interrupted by anything, silly, luckily. But I think that some of the moments of this film could have been treated more seriously. And I think that the tone, even with these characters, could have been a little bit more neutral in those moments. I talked about when Barbie lays on the ground when she gives up, and I talk about when Ken tries to like run off of the dream house building. It's just a little weird, and it doesn't really mean anything, and it doesn't make sense. And I think it would just be better off if like the characters stayed in the moments that they were having with the other characters around them. And another critique that I have is the relationship between Gloria and Sasha, the mother and the daughter. It just is a little clunky. I think the dialogue between them is a little clunky. They're especially during the car chase scene, which is basically like a commercial for Chevy that was thrown in here. But I heard it was because they did not give this film enough funding, so they had to kind of give in and let that happen. But anyways, there's like a moment in it where Sasha's like in the back seat and she's like, "Wake up, mom." And Gloria's like, "I am awake, sweetie." And it's just like a little cheesy. Not a little, it's pretty cringy. And there's sort of moments like that throughout the movie where it makes me think that maybe they didn't give enough time in characterizing this relationship between Gloria and Sasha. I really like this relationship, and it has a lot of beautiful moments, especially the flashback sequences where we get to see like Gloria and Sasha's relationship growing up. But, there are moments where the dialogue just, ugh, I don't love it. So I think that more time could have been spent describing this relationship a bit and illustrating it so that we don't have to have those cheesy moments later on. Okay, I think, surprisingly enough, I think that's everything I have to say about the movie. Like I said, very intentional about keeping it as brief as I can. But with all of that out of the way, I want to talk about the research a bit. And obviously, like, I think this is the moment where I could be as in depth as possible with the research and I could talk about it for hours because this movie has everything in terms of Gerwig. Like, all of my research is here. And that was something going into this movie I was really nervous about. It's like, I was like, is this going to line up with all this research I put all this time into? And everything lined up. It was kind of crazy. So I could go really into the weeds with this, but I'm also going to try to keep it as brief and concise as possible. So, getting into it, as I was saying, Barbie was a really interesting addition to my research because it was released after my research was initially finished. Like I said, this research originally started as my senior thesis at school, but became something more of that because of Barbie. So originally, my research ended with Little Women, and I wasn't even sure if Barbie would fit into any of the arguments I was making, but it ended up fitting so well that my professor emailed me suggesting that I revisit the research and implement Barbie. So in the summer after I graduated college, I opened my research back up and I studied Barbie and I added all of this new content to the article. And now, in the version that the research is now in, Barbie is pretty much like center stage. Getting into the research itself a bit, the character of Barbie is, of course, incredibly out of place. But what makes her interesting compared to the other out of place female protagonists in the other films that we've looked at is that she originally started very much in place. The thoughts of death, the cellulite, the flat feet, these things made her out of place. She wasn't always like that. And she no because of these things, she no longer fits the norm for women in Barbie Land. The film centers around her striving to fit back into place with the other Barbies, which, is something that we don't see quite as clearly with these other female protagonists. They usually are pretty adamant about staying out of place, but Barbie is trying the whole film to get back into that place of being this perfect, ideal Barbie. And fitting with Gerwig's other films, Barbie, of course, eventually embraces being out of place by choosing to be a human. She wants to be able to feel things and not be perfect, which sets her apart from the other femininities of the Barbies in this movie. In the end, she becomes a relatable role model for Gloria's character. Gloria now has a Barbie, in quotes, that looks like her and feels like her. It's like the perfect Barbie. And same with Sasha, who was frustrated with Barbies the whole movie because, they never were relatable to her. So, yeah, I think that the character of Barbie is a very unique female protagonist when it comes to other Gerwig films, but also she fits right in because she is this out of place character that eventually chooses to embrace being out of place. In the previous films, specifically Lady Bird and Little Women, we are also starting to look at how Gerwig depicts masculinity. And this film goes very, very far with that trend. In fact, this film indirectly answers a lot of the questions and arguments that Gerwig's other films raise in regards to masculinity. So, Barbie Land is an opposite version of how gender works in the real world. Men in Barbie Land are inferior to the women. The women hold all major positions of power. In the beginning, it's even said that the Kens can't have a great day unless a Barbie looks at them. But upon returning from the real world and quote unquote bringing back patriarchy to Barbie Land, Barbie Land becomes this like hyper realized version of the real world where men are completely dominant to women in every single way. But once the Barbies learn that they don't want this, and once the Kens learn that it doesn't benefit them either, they choose a world where Barbies and Kens are completely equal to one another instead. I think that this is why the line, "It's Barbie and it's Ken," is so important in the film. That is eventually even what I named my research after, is that line. But men and women are beside one another instead of positioned above or below each other. And I think that's why Gerwig argues that this is a human film more so than a feminist one, because it's just arguing for these two groups to be seen side by side with one another. And, this whole film is basically an argument to stop thinking of, one group being better than the other and stop like thinking that one is inferior or one is superior. I think that's why she usually says that it's more human than feminist. The film also explores how patriarchy, or really any system where a gender holds all control, hurts everyone, not just the gender with less control. Obviously, this is specifically directed at patriarchy. It's saying how, even though men hold positions of power in a patriarchal system, the patriarchal system still ends up hurting them. For example, when the Kens bring back patriarchy to Barbie Land, the Kens eventually become jealous, possessive, unruly, demanding, and just generally jackasses. And the Kens, or the men, become very reliant on having that power. And when the Barbies took that power away, they ended up fighting one another. This is not a system where the men were supporting one another, they were actually competing with one another. So, this is really just a huge critique of the patriarchy. And more specifically, this film critiques patriarchal masculinity. I wouldn't say that this film critiques men specifically, it's critiquing patriarchal masculinity. For the entirety of the film, these men who had patriarchal masculinity could only identify with the things they controlled or the things that controlled them. In the beginning of the film, they were completely reliant on the Barbies controlling them. And then towards the middle of the film, when they bring back patriarchy to Barbie Land, they are completely reliant on having that control over Barbie. The whole storyline of the Kens is about them being freed from being so reliant on this system. It's about them just freeing themselves of this control and just being themselves, being Barbie and Ken. And I think this is also where the character of Alan is really important, because Alan, sort of played by Michael Cera, which love, Alan also shows that not all men are, involved in this critique. And this might just be wishful thinking for me. But Alan is a character that shows not all men are involved in this patriarchal system, because when the Barbies are overthrowing the patriarchy in Barbie Land, Alan is actually with them and he's trying to fight with them to overthrow it. And when the Kens are sort of running around and causing havoc and making the Barbies give them foot massages, Alan is also there giving them foot massages. And he's just like, I hate this. This is so gross. So it's showing that not all men are being critiqued here and that some masculinities happen outside of this. So Alan is also a really good, symbol of queer representation, if you want to interpret it that way. Sure, queer men absolutely benefit from the patriarchy. All men benefit from the patriarchy in some way, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally. But Alan's character is showing that men can also play a part in taking apart the patriarchy, into destroying the patriarchy. Some feminists, such as Bell Hooks, even argue that men are necessary to destroying the patriarchy. So I love that Alan is here. I think that his inclusion in this story was brilliant. The last signature that is in this film that lines up with several of Gerwig's other films is the mother-daughter relationship that's here. Now, this is one that I flat out was not expecting to be in this film. You know, Barbie is a plastic doll. She does not have a mother. So I was really surprised when this movie, had a lot to say about the mother-daughter relationship. And this is a signature that we see in Lady Bird, and we see it in Little Women, and we see it in Barbie. So I think 3 is enough. It's definitely here to stay at this point. So we'll see how else she incorporates this later. But the signature, once again, is very concerned with illustrating the similarities between a mother and daughter. Okay, with all of that said, I think that's everything I want to say about Barbie right now. And I know this was it was a lot shorter than it could be. Let's see, what is the time at? Unedited, I'm already at an hour and 15 minutes, so this is a long episode already, but I think I could have just gone so much further with literally everything about this movie, but I think that was like my concise version of talking about Barbie. So I'm gonna get to the verdict. I give Barbie, directed by Greta Gerwig, the Nick pick. Duh. Of course. Barbie is an instantly classic film that does the impossible task of creating a story for this iconic toy that everyone can relate to and connect with. Through its use of soundtrack, set design, performances, comedy, and clever storytelling, Barbie transports you to a different world and teaches you a thing or two about the real world while you're there. Although the tone can be inconsistent and the dialogue can be a little clunky, I think it's charming, and I wouldn't have it any other way. This movie's iconic, so why would you want to change it? It's great. I love this movie. I would encourage you to watch this movie, but I don't think there's a single person listening to this podcast that has not seen it. Yeah, but if you somehow have not seen this movie, please go watch it. It is streaming on Max, and I think Max is the best streaming service in my opinion, so just go get Max and watch this movie. But yeah, and with that, that is the last film review in the GRETA-THON. Oh, and I'm a little sad, but there are so many more projects coming. There's so much in the pipeline. Narnia, Snow White, it's all on the way. I'm so excited. There's going to be more to talk about, so maybe the GRETA-THON will come back to talk about those movies too, but I'm going to talk about all of this in the finale episode, which is going to come out in just a few days. So stay tuned for that because I have a special announcement and I'm just going to sort of talk about my feelings about this series so far. So, yes. And if you have not listened to it yet, there are all the other Gerwig movies have a review out right now on my podcast. So listen to reviews on Frances Ha, Lady Bird, Little Women, Mistress America, and even some of her older mumblecore movies like Nights and Weekends and Hannah Takes the Stairs. Even if you have not seen those movies, definitely listen to the reviews. I think they're a lot of fun, but I might be a little biased. We have a lot of Dear Coffee Nick to cover today. In this segment, I will be reading some letters from fellow coffee and movie enjoyers about their own coffee and movie opinions, reviews, thoughts, hot takes, or whatever. We have so much ground to cover, so I'm going to kind of do these like very rapid fire style, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so we have a series of 3 questions from Cooper. Hi, Cooper. Oh my gosh, I love when you send in questions. You always have like the most fun questions to answer. And I hope you're doing well. I hope your movie that you worked on, which is called Average Joe, and that's going to be in theaters October 11th. I had to check. It's going to be in theaters October 11th. I hope that there's all sorts of fun things going on with that right now. I'm sure you're very excited for the movie to be out in theaters, but everyone get your tickets to Average Joe October 11th because Cooper worked on it. And I think that is so cool. But getting into your questions, the first one is, what do you believe is the largest cultural impact from Barbie? Um, Obviously, I think it's the Barbenheimer. It's just this really revolutionized the theater going experience with this double feature. And since then, people like, of course, have been like looking for the new Barbenheimer. What two movies are coming out the same day? I know the Paw Control movie and Saw 10 were coming out the same day last year. Obviously, it's not the same, but I just think like it was a lightning in the bottle moment that got people in the theater, butts sitting in chairs. So I think that probably was the biggest moment. And of course, I said it earlier, but the marketing here was just so. It was such a cultural moment and it was such a reset. Just the posters that everyone was sort of like interacting with and changing, and all the pink and all like that. You'll see Barbie in stores everywhere. It just completely changed so many things. In terms of moments from the movie, I think Mojo Dojo Casa House was probably the biggest cultural impact. And of course, What Was I Made For? That song is still on my For You page on TikTok to this day, with good reason. It's so good. And yeah, it absolutely deserved the Oscar. So your second question is, did Barbie save cinema? I think this is a really good question, but my answer is no. I don't think it did. And I know that's kind of crazy to say, but I think it was a step in saving cinema, but there were steps that came before it. There were movies that came before this, and there were movies that came after it. I think that all together have saved cinema. I think that Top Gun Maverick was maybe the first step on that staircase, if this stair metaphor is making sense. I think that Top Gun Maverick was like the first movie after COVID that really got people going back to the theater. I think Barbie was very early on in this staircase. Oppenheimer was the next step, or maybe the step below, or maybe it was the same step. I don't know. This metaphor is falling apart. And there will be more steps. I think Dune Part 2 is like one of the more recent steps. Challengers is one of the more recent steps. But I think that a lot of people say that movie theaters are dying and they're not doing well, but I think they're doing great. I haven't looked at the finances or anything, but it seems like they're doing good. But I think that the marketing teams behind these films are honestly to thank for these reasons. They are the ones getting people's butts in the chairs. So, you know, hats off to the film marketing teams out there. Okay, and then Cooper, your third question, or more just like is this a dare or a task? I don't know. It's not a question, but this is my favorite one. I love this question. Um, Nightmare recast of Barbie. That is so funny. So obviously, the nightmare recast of the character of Barbie herself was almost a reality, and that was Amy Schumer. If Amy Schumer played Barbie, this movie would have been dead on arrival, I think. It would have just faded to obscurity immediately. Oppenheimer just would have been like the only movie people were talking about that summer. And I don't even know. There would be no more pink in the world. Pink would be like an extinct color, I guess. But I'm going to continue this recast. I'm really proud of this. Nightmare recast. Ken would be played by Chris Pratt. Gloria Gloria would be played by Jennifer Lopez. And then the ensemble Barbies and Kens. So the ensemble Barbies, one of them would be Catherine Newton, and then one of the ensemble Kens would be Ryan Reynolds. So that's my brief Nightmare recast. I'm very proud of it. However, I do have people that I would have loved to see in the movie. This is not Nightmare recast at all. These are just people that I wish could have been in it. Saoirse Ronan and Timothy Chalamet. I love that they were in two of Gerwig's previous projects, and Gerwig has even said like she would have loved them to be in Barbie, but it was like a scheduling conflict. They're both very busy actors. I would just love to have seen them in like a little cameo role, maybe. And then my other two, which are kind of oddball ones, are Nicki Minaj and Trixie Mattel, just because their like fan base and their brand is sort of built around Barbie. And, Nicki Minaj is in this movie. Her song is in this movie. But I wish she had like a little cameo as well, and Trixie Mattel. And if Trixie's going to be there, then Katya has to be there too. So there we go. Okay, this next question is from Harrison. Hello, Harrison. Four characters in the film that you most identify with. This is interesting. Okay, so Alan is number one for obvious reasons. If you know, you know. Gloria is number two. I really like the character of Gloria. She is very poetic, and she's also very sentimental and contemplative. I really like that about her. Barbie is number three. I really like Margot's performance as Barbie. And then Ken is number four, but only when he says, Sublime! I love that moment. So thank you for your question, Harrison. And I forgot to say, but thank you for your questions, Cooper. I always love them. Okay, this next question. This is a big question. This is from Sophia. Hi, dancing buddy. Oh my gosh, I miss you so much. We need to catch up sometime. But thank you for the question. How did you feel about Shakira's negative comments on the movie? So for those of you who have not heard about this, Shakira had a lot to say about this movie, and this is what she said. My sons absolutely hated it. They felt that it was emasculating. And I agree to a certain extent. I'm raising two boys. I want them to feel powerful too, while respecting women. I like pop culture when it attempts to empower women without robbing men of their possibility to be men, to also protect and provide. I believe in giving women all the tools and the trust that we can do it all without losing our essence, without losing our femininity. I think that men have a purpose in society and women have another purpose as well. We complement each other, and that complement should not be lost. First of all, end quote, end quote. First of all, girl, don't you have to pay your taxes? Don't you have to pay your taxes? Yeah, that's what I thought. Gerwig responded to this comment, which I was not expecting when this first happened. Gerwig said, quote, my hope for the movie is that it's an invitation for everybody to be a part of the party and let go of things that aren't necessarily serving us as either men or women. I hope that in all of that passion, if they see it or engage with it, it can give them some of the relief that it gave other people. End quote. I think that that is a perfect response to what Shakira said. That's a weird statement to say. Gerwig, that was a great rebuttal against Shakira. But yes, I think that this movie is an invitation for everyone. Like I said before, I think that this movie is for everyone. And yes, this is critiquing men, but I think it's more specifically just critiquing patriarchal masculinity. I don't think that men should feel attacked by this movie. I don't think they need to feel attacked or should feel attacked. Um, I just think that this movie is critiquing a system that men are at the forefront of, that men primarily benefit from, that men are often the biggest proponents of. Women can also promote and engage in the patriarchy. So I think that Shakira saying this, it's very tone deaf, and I don't really think she's seeing the bigger picture here. And I think that's something that all of us in society should know by now is that by making one group feel powerful or by uplifting one group, you are not taking away the rights or diminishing the rights of another group. Just because this movie is, promoting and uplifting women and critiquing patriarchal masculinity, it is not bashing men or emasculating them. This movie is an invitation for men to find a new definition of masculinity or to challenge their own masculinity and to question it. Like, is my masculinity really benefiting me as a person? Is it benefiting the people around me? And if the answer is no, then yeah, reassess and find a new way to engage with your own masculinity. It just, this is an icky response. I think it's also saying robbing men of their possibility to be men. Like this movie was saying that, they couldn't be men or anything, or that it was wrong to be a man. The ending for Ken's character was literally saying like, hey, be your own person without Barbie. Be your own person without a woman being like either above or below you. Just be you. Like you're not your beach, you're not your car, you're not your mink. She says like just be yourself, really. So this is just such a tone deaf comment. And to say that men have a purpose in society and women have a purpose and oh my, I don't know. It just feels very archaic, very like hunter gatherer and everything. And I don't know, girl. Like Shakira, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I frankly just don't think that, you know, I am a huge proponent on this podcast of everyone is entitled to their own interpretation, but to me, this interpretation that Shakira had, it feels very tone deaf and like she just tuned out for like the last 45 minutes of the movie, maybe. So yeah, I don't agree, and I don't think that this is a valid take, really. But thank you for this question, Sophia. I think that this is a great thing to address and to talk about because I think that a lot of people will jump to the conclusion saying that this movie is woke, or that it is emasculating. Um, but I don't think any of those things are true. I think that this movie is, in fact, very empowering towards men, just as much as it is empowering towards women. Um, and, you know, just because words like patriarchy are thrown around does not mean something is woke. Do not tune out just because that word is said. The last question is from Reese. Hello, Reese. Always so nice to hear from you. What Oscars should Barbie have won? The answer is all of them. Barbie should have won all of the Oscars. So, yeah. But in all honesty, this is a complicated question for me because last year's Oscar season was so competitive. I've talked about this with you, Reese, but 2022, 2023, those are some of the best years for movies that like we can think of. For us, at least. I don't know. We just both really attached ourselves to those years. So there were so many great performances, so many great movies and everything. So while I think that Barbie could have very easily swept all of these categories, a lot of these categories were extremely competitive, and it comes down to preference and personal connection, really. However, I do think that this film should have won Best Director, obviously. Don't know much about Christopher Nolan and his directing style when it comes to Oppenheimer, but I think this was Greta's time. Sorry, Christopher. I also think that Best Supporting Actor should have went to Barbie. I've talked about this on the show before. I'm not a huge Robert Downey Jr. fan, and I am a huge Ryan Gosling fan, and I was very attached to Ryan Gosling's performance as Ken. So I was really hoping that he won this. Best Original Score, I think it should have gone to Barbie as well. Oppenheimer had a brilliant score, but I think that Barbie's was just a little bit better than Oppenheimer's. And I also think that Barbie should have won Best Adapted Screenplay. Even though I don't agree with Barbie being in the adapted screenplay category, I think it should have been an original screenplay. I think it should have won. If it was in original screenplay, I think it should have won that too. Yes, Greta is adapting the toy Barbie to a movie, but I just don't think it was enough of an adaptation to be like, oh, this is an adaptation, if that makes sense. Like, if you're adapting a book into a movie, yes, that is an adapted screenplay. But Greta had so much work to do in creating this character and creating this character's story and creating this world. There was really like not much to go off of. Like, this is a pretty original story and screenplay. So I think it should have either won adapted screenplay or original. I think it should have been an original. Um, I would have loved to see Margot win Best Actress in a leading role. I would have loved to see America win Best Supporting Actress, but those categories were just so fierce that year that I ultimately preferred Emma Stone winning Best Actress, and I ultimately preferred Da'Vine Joy Randolph winning Supporting Actress. So, like I said, they absolutely could have won, and I would have loved to see them win, but it was competitive. It was competitive. Everyone, thank you so much for sending in these letters. I had such a fun time with these ones. And if you would like to send in a letter, please feel free to write Dear Coffee Nick through DM on social media or email coffeenicksmoviepics@gmail.com. Oof. Oh my gosh, my energy is just sapped away right now. It's gone. That was a long review. I don't even know. I'll probably cut out a lot. We'll see. But I had such a fun time, and I've had such a fun time with the GRETA-THON as much as I love to complain about it. I am a little excited to review just regular movies coming soon, but it's been wonderful. And I'm so grateful for all of you for allowing me to talk about my favorite director on here and to talk about my research and to just have this space and have this moment. I promise it's over soon, so just bear with me. But yeah, thank you all for tuning into this episode of the GRETA-THON on Coffee Nick's Movie Picks. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, follow the show's social media, and share the show with your friends. I would really appreciate that if you did. Until next time, do you all ever think about dying? Thanks again for listening to the GRETA-THON on Coffee Nick's Movie Picks. Our opening theme is The Light Within, and our closing theme is When the Ash Settles, both themes by the Westerlies. Before you go, please be sure to follow the show on social media at Coffee Nick's Movie Picks, and give the show the Nick Pick by rating it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Thanks so much!